Hello and warm regards from Next IAS team. Welcome to another episode of Daily News Analysis. Today we are going to discuss the following topics. The first topic is G7, then FATF, then Bonn Convention. Fourth topic is Disaster Management Preparedness, and lastly in the decoded section we are going to discuss about India and Bangladesh and Bay of Bengal. The first topic in the explain section is G7 leaders struggle for unity as Trump says removing Russia from it was a mistake. Now the backdrop here is the G7 summit that is going on in Alberta in Canada. Now the backdrop here is that G7 leaders are seeking a common approach on war in Ukraine and Middle East that is happening right now, the Iran-Israel conflict. Now this topic is relevant from GS paper 2 in the international relations and regional and global groupings. Now let's talk about the G7. The G7 is an informal alliance of the top developed countries. Which are these top developed countries? It is USA, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Japan and Canada. Along with them, on the annual basis, the summits are being held, and in these summits, the invitees are also from European Union, IMF, World Bank and UN. Even India was also invited to this G7 summit. Now, the G7 was earlier formed in 1975. It was formed as G6 and it was in the wake of 1973 oil crisis. In 1976, Canada also joined it and it became G7. Then after that in 1997, Russia also became part of this G7 and it became G8. In 2014, Russia was removed and it again became G7. So that is the history of G7. Now next is that the objectives of G7. The objectives include foremost the promoting dialogue on major global challenges like climate change, trade related issues and security related issues. It enables joint action and policy alignment of various developed countries, and it helps in shaping the global priorities and agendas. Why this G7 is important? Because it holds 60% of the global net wealth. Secondly, it accounts for 46% of the global GDP, although the population or the world population contributed is only 10%. So, world's 46% GDP, world's 60% global net wealth comes from these G7 countries, and they account for world's 10% of the population. That's why if the policy alignment and joint action are by these important countries, then it becomes then the globally these will be followed. Now next is agenda of the G7 that is happening right now. So first of all, the agenda is about the Ukraine conflict, how to resolve it. So there are multiple questions on which the discussions are going on. For example, they need a common approach to the war in the Ukraine. The US is having a different approach and European countries are having different approach. So they want a common approach for that. Secondly, what can be the potential ceasefire, what can be the conditionalities for that, and how to pursue for the lasting peace. Because a number of times we are seeing whenever Ukraine and Russia are approaching towards a peace, there is something happening which is again putting them in conflict. Now, France is pushing for a ceasefire and durable peace. Also, there are discussions with the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, about the new weapon purchase as well as tougher sanctions on Russia. Now, Donald Trump, the US president, is having a different stand. He says that Russia should not have been removed from G7. Removing Russia from G8 was a big mistake and that should be reverted back. Now next issue is about the Middle East tensions. Earlier, Israel and Gaza conflict was going on. Now this conflict has expanded to Israel-Iran conflict. Amid these rising Israel-Iran tensions, the Canada G7 summit is viewed as a crucial rebuilding unity among the democracies. However, earlier signs of discord emerged as Trump declined to support a draft statement urging de-escalation. So Trump is again not supporting de-escalation. Next is about the geopolitical and economic talks. Now there are other issues also which are affecting the global economy. For example, the rise of China's growing influence. Then we have G7 price cap on Russian oil, that is also being discussed, that we should lower the price cap on the Russian oil. Then there is emphasis on mitigating the economic impact of ongoing international conflicts, how these conflicts can be mitigated. And why we are discussing about the lowering the G7 price cap on Russian oil? Because now Iran has gone into conflict. due to which the oil prices are going to surge up, and it is going to affect the whole global economy. So on these issues, the G7 summit is being focused upon. Now next is there is a draft declaration also on which the Trump's approval is being now awaited. It is on migration, the artificial intelligence, and the critical mineral supply chains. Now you have to attempt this MCQ and you have to put your answers in the comment box. The second topic is about FATF. FATF has condemned the Pahalgam attack, Red Flags Fund, terror supporters. Now the backdrop here is that there is a recent condemnation of the Pahalgam attack by FATF. Now FATF has recognized that this Pahalgam attack would not have been possible without financial aid, and this financial aid has now been recognized as a state-funded terrorism. This topic becomes relevant from GS paper 3 in the internal security, GS paper 2 in the international relations. Now let's see about the news. The Financial Action Task Force, or FATF, it is a global anti-terror financing watchdog, has condemned the recent Pahalgam terror attack that happened in India, and emphasized that such incidents are enabled by financial support and fund movement. Now this is the third such condemnation in a decade that has been given by FATF. It has acknowledged the state-sponsored terrorism as a source of terror funding. It is directly upon Pakistan that Pakistan is going for a state-sponsored terrorism, and this funding was part of that. And it also aligns with India's national risk assessment, which identifies Pakistan's role in this regard. So indirectly, FATF has recognized that Pakistan has a role in this Pahalgam attack. FATF will release a report next week for the first time and will include state sponsorship as a separate source of funding for terror. FATF has developed a terror financing risk and context toolkit also. This also becomes important for you. You should be knowing which agency has developed this terror financing risk and content toolkit. This is by FATF. It can be asked in prelims. To help evaluators better identify and counter misleading claims by countries like Pakistan. Now FATF, or Financial Action Task Force, it is an intergovernmental organization. There are total 40 members, and Russia's membership has now been suspended. Now its basic objective is to lead global action to tackle the money laundering as well as terrorist financing. Money laundering, it is used in organized crime, terrorist funding, and any type of illegal activity. It sets international standards to ensure national authorities can effectively go through illicit funds linked to direct trafficking, illicit armed trade, cyber fraud, and serious crimes. As a policy-making body, FATF works to generate necessary political will to bring about national legislative and regulatory reforms in this area. Now you should be knowing about this thing that its recommendations are not legally binding, but the international standards that it is generating, they are used by IMF and World Bank also, and UN also. That's why its standards become standards for the global jurisdiction to follow. Now next thing is the history of this FATF. FATF was initially formed in 1989 by G7, and basic objective was to combat the money laundering activities that were happening there. G7, I suppose you remember right now, it is US, UK, France, Italy, Canada, Japan. So these are G7 countries. It originally included G7 countries, European Commission, and the 8 other countries. After that, in 2001, the FATF expanded its mandate from money laundering to include terrorist financing as well. And 2001 was a time when multiple things has happened. For example, parliamentary attack in India that happened in 2001 expanded its mandate in the terrorist financing. There are currently 40 members of FATF. India is one of the member, and Pakistan is not a member of FATF. That you should be knowing. Pakistan is not a member of FATF, and India is a member of FATF. Russia is not a member of FATF. Its membership has now been suspended. So FATF has suspended Russia's membership in February 2023, and Pakistan is not a member of FATF. The next thing is about FATF's structure. So there is a FATF president, and that president is elected by FATF plenary. Plenary is the biggest decision-making body of FATF. It meets 3 times a year and it decides upon the grey list and the blacklist. Now, the nature of recommendations, what is the nature? The nature of recommendation is not legally binding, as I have already told you, but World Bank, IMF, UNSC or United Nations Security Council, they recognize these recommendations as international standards. And that's why more than 180 countries across the globe have undertaken to comply with those recommendations. Next is about the FATF grey and black list. There are basically 2 lists, one is a grey list and one is a black list. Grey list simply means that if it has been recognized that from your countries the terrorist financing is happening, and if you are serious enough to comply with the time frames and the monitoring, then the countries are going to be put in the grey list. For example, Pakistan has been for a long time in this grey list. Second is the blacklist. Blacklist is the high risk jurisdiction subject to call for action. That means for these jurisdiction or for these countries, action against them should be taken. So countries or jurisdictions with serious strategic deficiencies to counter money laundering. Strategic deficiencies means that their government is not capable to tackle this money laundering or terrorist financing or proliferation. At present, that is June 2025, only 3 countries are in blacklist. One is North Korea, second is Iran, and third one is Myanmar. These 3 countries are in blacklist. Other countries like Pakistan, they are considered for the grey list. Now, one more thing is there, national risk assessment. A national risk assessment is a systematic process to identify and assess the risk of money laundering and terrorist financing. India is actively engaged in the NRA process and is part of the commitment to the FATF recommendations. Then one last thing, that is Asia Pacific Group on Money Laundering. This is an intergovernmental organization that is implementing the international standards that against money laundering and terrorist financing that are set by the FATF. It is an associate member of FATF, first of all. Then there are 41 members in its jurisdiction, and both India and Pakistan are its member. So Pakistan is also member of it and India is also member of it. Then FATF standards. Members commit to the FATF recommendations which outline international standards for AML or CFT, anti-money laundering or terrorist financing. Now with this, you have to attempt this MCQ and you have to put your answers in the comment box. The third topic is about the climate change. The Bonn Climate Change Conference begins at Bonn in Germany. This topic is relevant from GS paper 3 in the environment section. Let's see about this. The annual Bonn Climate Change Conference commenced in Bonn, Germany. Over 5,000 government delegates and stakeholders are participating in it. It will conclude on June 26, and conference will focus upon the key climate issues, particularly the mobilization of finances to combat the climate change. Then this Bonn Climate Change Conference is an annual mid-year meeting which takes place under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Now this is formally known as the sessions of UNFCCC subsidiary bodies. It is an annual conference, and another annual conference that happens is of the COP that usually happens in November. It is attended by members of subsidiary bodies, indigenous representatives, international organizations, scientists and civil society representatives. Then the objective is, it discusses the technical and scientific aspects of the climate change and sets the agenda for the COP. So whatever agenda has to be decided on the COP, this agenda is set by this Bonn Climate Change Conference which happens every year. Its recommendations are frequently appear in the final decisions acted upon by the parties at the COP. The implementation of agreements set at previous COP is also discussed. So the basic objective of this Bonn Climate Change Conference is to set the agenda for the COP, what decisions are going to be taken by the conference of the parties. Secondly, the previous decisions that have been taken, what have been the implementation status of those decisions. Now, if we see the subsidiary bodies of UNFCCC, there are basically 2 bodies. One is subsidiary body for implementation, another one is subsidiary body for scientific technological advice. Now this body for implementation, it assesses and reviews the implementation of UNFCCC decisions to facilitate discussions on financial and technical support to the developing countries. This SBSTA, or Subsidiary Body for Scientific and Technological Advice, provides scientific knowledge related to climate change and serves as a link between scientific advisors and IPCC and policy makers. Now, if we talk about this year's agenda, one of the key topics here will be about global goal on adaptation. Global goal on adaptation means that what goal we are going to achieve. For example, one of the goal is achieving is restricting the global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now this global goal on mitigation, it is known as the GGA, or Global Goal on Adaptation, was adopted or established at the Paris Agreement in COP21 in 2015. In COP28 Dubai in 2023, the framework for defining this global goal on adaptation was adopted. So initially GGA was adopted in the Paris Agreement. However, the framework, how it is going to be adopted, what are going to be intricacies of that was adopted at Dubai 2023. Now next is the UNFCCC. It is a multilateral governing action to combat the climate change. It is the outcome of the Earth Summit that had held at Rio de Janeiro in 1992. Now this UNFCCC, or United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, was adopted or entered into force on 21st March 1994. India ratified this in 1993. There are total 197 countries which have ratified this framework. It is considered as the parent treaty for Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Agreement of 2015. Then the nodal agency in India. The nodal agency in India for implementation of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Then lastly, the Conference of Parties. Conference of Parties is the decision making body of this UNFCCC. All states that are parties to the convention are, that is 197 states, are represented at COP, at which they review the implementation of the convention. This COP takes place every year, usually in November, December. Now based upon this, you have to attempt this MCQ and you have to put your answers in the comment box. The fourth topic in the explain section is about the disaster management. Amit Shah, the Honorable Home Minister of India, has launched the tech platforms for better disaster management. The backdrop is the tools for real-time response, a national database and a flood hazard atlas of Assam were revealed. This topic is relevant from GS paper 3 in the disaster management. Now these are the three platforms that have been revealed by our Home Minister. First one is the Integrated Control Room for Emergency Response, ICRER. Then we have National Database for Emergency Management, Light 2.0, that is NDEM Light 2.0. Thirdly, the Flood Hazard Zonation Atlas of Assam. Now as we see in India, the nature of the disasters is now increasing. The number as well as the nature of the disaster is now being changing and has been increasing. Now in that response, these three platforms have been released by the Home Minister. Now first of all, this Integrated Control Room for Emergency Response, how it is going to function? It is going to provide the real-time disaster response. There will be a satellite data that will be directly streamed to the rescue agencies for faster coordination. Secondly, National Database for Emergency Management Light 2.0. It will strengthen the coordination among the disaster response forces across the country. It will help in strengthening or ensuring agility and integrated response during the calamities. Last one is about the flood hazard zonation of the Assam, because every year the Brahmaputra river floods the Assam. So in that case, it will provide the real-time flood related data, including the water levels in the river and impact zones. So it is going to aid in the disaster mitigation and planning. Now what is the significance of these particular initiatives? It is going to improve the speed and precision of the disaster response using modern technology. Then it will enhance the real-time coordination and data accessibility. It will empower the field level response teams with the integrated and localized information. Then it will support the disaster mitigation planning, particularly in the flood prone areas of the Assam. So basically it will strengthen our disaster response and our preparedness. Now based upon this, you have to attempt a very simple MCQ visible on your screens and you have to put your answers in the comment box. Now it's time for decoding the editorial. The editorial that we are having today is about India and Bangladesh. The topic is India's uneasy balancing act in Bay of Bengal. Backdrop: signing of the BIMSTEC Maritime Transport Cooperation Agreement. It is relevant from GS Paper 2, International Relations, Regional Groupings, Agreements involving India and affecting India's interest. Now, something about the news. First of all, recent economic development and opportunities in Bay of Bengal side of Indian coast. Increased trade activity have been observed on the eastern side. There has been rising cargo throughput through Visakhapatnam, Paradip and Haldia ports. It has been possible. Why? Because there is growth in coastal shipping supported by the GST cuts on bunker fuels as well as Sagarmala programs. Now, there is an agreement known as BIMSTEC Maritime Agreement. It has been signed this year only, and the parties involved are basically the BIMSTEC countries, that is Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Myanmar, Nepal, Sri Lanka and Thailand. The objective is very simple. The objective is to strengthen the maritime transport cooperation among the countries and to boost trade and cargo movement along these member nations. Member nations are all along the Bay of Bengal. Then its objective is to ease the regulatory friction and reduce the port cost so that the trade can be increased. Next is the principles. It is based upon the three principles. First of all, national sovereignty. Second is mutual benefit. First of all, the sovereignty will not be compromised. There is going to be mutual benefit. And thirdly, the national and international laws will be respected and they will be adhered to. Now, there are three elements under this. One is cargo transport, second one is equal treatment, and third one is landlocked access. What is cargo transport? The cargo transport is that the shipping companies can operate from each other's port. For example, if India's shipping company is situated here and here is the Myanmar. So, India's shipping company can operate through this Myanmar seaport as well. So, they can operate between each other's ports on a mutual benefit basis. Secondly, whenever this is happening, when the companies are operating from other nations' seaport, then those home countries are going to treat the shipping companies as their own. So, it says that the member states shall treat the vessels from other member states as their own or similar to the domestic vessels. Third is the landlocked access. What is landlocked access? For example, Nepal is there and Bhutan is there. They do not have any coastal boundary. For these countries, the other countries are going to provide a maritime rights. That means one port will be provided to them through which they can transport their goods. So, it is also given under the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea. So, basically this BIMSTEC Maritime Agreement is there to support each other in this southeastern region. Now, next is what is the significance here? It is going to enhance the regional trade connectivity. Then it will reduce the trade cost and port related barriers, and also it will help in integration of landlocked countries into the maritime trade networks. Then the second news that we are having here is the withdrawal of the Bangladesh transshipment facility by our country India. So, India has revoked the transshipment access and allowed Bangladesh to use Indian ports for third party export. Third party export means if they are not exporting to India and they are exporting to any other country outside India, then these exports will now be revoked. Now, this access has been now revoked. It simply means, for example, this is Bangladesh and this is India. So, Chennai port is there. So, if Bangladesh wants to go to Chennai port and then it wants to export to any other third country, then this right has been now revoked. Now, perception kya hai Dhaka mein? What is the perception there? The perception is that this is a politically motivated move, because Bangladesh is now moving towards China. That's why India has taken this step. Now, from Indian side, the reason cited is that the logistical issues, because there is a port congestion also. In India, already the maritime trade is increasing, the shipping needs are increasing. That's why this incoming traffic from other countries is leading to port congestion. So, that's why India has said there will be no third party transshipment from Indian ports. Now, India has it has also been interpreted that Indian displeasure over the Bangladesh describing Northeast as landlocked. So, Bangladesh have done two activities. First of all, it is moving towards China. Secondly, it is threatening India that India's Northeast is a landlocked region. So, the Bangladesh is saying that India has taken this step in response of these two steps taken by the Bangladesh. Then, what this political signaling from India goes like? So, first of all, India's message. The India message is very clear that Dhaka should be cautioned against the strategic balancing that it is going for. It is now outreaching to China. Also, it has resumed the maritime trade with Pakistan. So, Bangladesh should be cautious to which countries it is now improving its relations, and those countries how much they are aligned with India. For example, China and Pakistan, they are not a friendly nation for the India. So, that's why we have the Bangladesh has been cautioned against it. Second is impact on the Bangladesh. It will increase uncertainty and cost for the Bangladesh exporters. Already Bangladesh is going through a political turmoil. The cost of production has increased, and in addition to this, this transshipment is creating uncertainty, and there is going to be cost escalation for the Bangladesh transshipments or exporters. And if they want to go for alternate routes like Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia, these ports are already costlier and they are also less efficient. Then third is further restrictions. India has also imposed limits on the import of 7 Bangladeshi goods via Northeast Land Port. So, through the Northeast Land Port, these 7 items cannot be imported. Then products are now being rerouted through the seaports like Kolkata and Nhava Sheva, which is going to increase their cost. The next is what does this withdrawal of the Bangladesh transshipment facility means to the other members. So, there can be concern among the other BIMSTEC members. For example, India is now leveraging its economic tools for political influence. That is one concern that they might be having, and they might feel that in future they may also see this. Secondly, it is also raising doubts about India's commitment to the cooperative regionalism. Then the poor India's port infrastructure is unmatched in the region. That's why other countries are dependent upon India. Now, however, shifting trade access based on political signals risk long-term trust and cooperation. So, basically, by this action, although we are telling Bangladesh that Bangladesh should be cautious about that what steps they are taking, but it can have some negative implications also. Other members of the BIMSTEC, other neighbors of India can also have apprehensions regarding India's commitment to cooperative regionalism, India's use of economic tools for political influence, and the better infrastructure that India is having, and using that as a political leverage can have issues with respect to long-term trust and cooperation. Now, what India should be doing? India should be first of all balance its asserting strategic interest with maintaining the regional trust. Secondly, regional future as a trade coordinator hinges on the credible and stable policies that the India is having. Now, something about BIMSTEC. BIMSTEC, as we know, the members are Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, then Thailand and Sri Lanka. It was formed in 1997 as BISTEC. Then Myanmar joined itself in that year. It became BIMSTEC. Nepal and Bhutan joined later in 2004 and it became a 7-member group. Officially, it became BIMSTEC with the adoption of the charter in 2022 that was adopted at the Colombo summit, and it outlines the objective, principles and governance framework. So, BIMSTEC actually became a very formal organization through this Colombo summit that happened in 2022. It is headquartered at Dhaka in Bangladesh, and the secretariat was established in 2014. The operational structure, it facilitates intergovernmental coordination and sectoral cooperation. Now, based upon the discussion, you can attempt this mains question visible on your screens, and with this we conclude for the day. Thank you.